anyone listening has like a dog and your dog gets stressed. Let's say you gave them a bath and they're just feeling stressed about the bath. After the bath, what do? They go on a running jag and they're zooming around the house and they're shaking and they're moving. Their nervous system is saying that was a lot of stress and I don't want to be in a body that is filled with stress. I want to get rid of it. And so they will do these shaking, making sound, running around so that their nervous system can actually discharge or get rid of it. So if our dogs can do it, if the squirrel outside can do it, we can do it too.
Welcome back to Fearless Narrative, a show that's all about the incredible stories of women who are changing the game, breaking the rules, and pushing through the boundaries to face their fears head on because they are fearless entrepreneurs and creatives, and we love to see it. I am your host, Courtlyn Jones, and on our show, we go into a deep dive into captivating storytelling and engaging conversations with these incredible women as they share how they are pursuing their passions and shattering glass ceilings along the way. We love that so much. It's so inspiring and so empowering to share these stories with you. And hopefully it will empower you to embrace your own fearless path. Our show is all about feeling the fear and doing it anyway, as well as women supporting women. We love that. We need more of that always. So before we get started, don't forget to hit the button to subscribe to our show. We also would love a nice 5-star review at the end. Without further ado, let's go into a new episode right now. Enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome back to Fearless Narratives. I am your host, Courtlyn Jones, and joining us today is Sarah Baldwin of Sarah Baldwin Coaching. Sarah is a Somatic Experiencing Practitioner and trauma-trained life coach, but also a guiding force for those seeking to untangle the complexities of their past, reconnect with their bodies, and step into a life of purpose and resilience. With a rich background in somatic practices, attachment theory, and polyvagal training, Sarah's on a mission to empower individuals to heal, grow, and live the vibrant lives they deserve. Sarah, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing? So good to be here with you.
I'm happy to talk to you too. Okay, so I'm dying to know about your start to your journey. And can you tell us about the moments that led you to where you are today?
Yeah. Well, I would say it all began personally because the reason that I do the work I do is all because of my personal experience. So I have a complex trauma history. And that means that, or what that means for me is, I experienced pretty severe neglect and sexual abuse in my home as a child that went on for a long time. And as the result of that, it left me deeply dysregulated in my nervous system. Because the thing about trauma is until it's resolved, our system thinks it's essentially happening all the time or could happen at any moment. So even if what happened is actually over, our system is responding as if it's still happening in the present. So this led me to, I was in my early 20s. I was no longer in that home, but I was still experiencing so many of the things and the symptoms, and actually they seemed to be progressing. Things like I was deeply dissociated, so feeling like I wasn't in my body at all, not present, didn't know who I was, if the world was real. I was using everything under the sun to cope. Using food to numb, drinking to numb, sex to numb, working all the time to numb, sleeping to numb, all the things. And was having panic attacks, just really not functioning. And it really felt like the only option for me was to either not be here or to heal. And so I chose to heal, and it was a long journey to find the work that was necessary, because so much of my field, mental health, is really focused around or predominantly focused around psychodynamic or talk therapy. Talk therapy is the thing that most people think of when they think of therapy, or mindset work or coaching or whatever. All of that is a cognitive approach, and that certainly has a place. There's importance to it, but it's not the whole picture. And so what happened to me was I was going down that road, and there was lots of good things happening in those talk therapy dynamics. Like I was feeling safe for the first time and I was able to talk about my experience and understand it more. But it didn't actually help me to not feel shame. It didn't help at all. No matter how much I talked about why it wasn't my fault, I still felt shame. It didn't help me to not feel depressed. There was no amount of talking about it that actually helped me to feel less depressed. It certainly didn't make me feel less anxious or panicked or stuck in terror. It didn't change those things. And unfortunately, no one was telling me why. So I just assumed, oh, this must be that something's wrong with me. And the thing about my field, mental health, that I think has done people a disservice is that if you think about the medical field, for example, there's specialists. So, if I have a heart problem, I go to a cardiologist. If I have an eye problem, I go to an ophthalmologist. And that's kind of public knowledge. Everybody sort of knows that. Mm-hmm. When it comes to mental health, there are actually specialists that we need for different things, but that is not made public knowledge. And so what happens is, like me, when I was starting my healing journey, 15 years ago, I just thought, I guess you just go to therapy and that's going to fix everything. And it didn't. And it led me to really, I had to devote my life to healing and finding different avenues. And it led me to finding somatic work, which is work of the body. It certainly can be touch work, you're touching the body, but it's more about how do I get into my body? And trauma lives in our body. So all the things I mentioned that couldn't be resolved by talking, they had to be resolved somatically. And that healed my life. It is the only reason I'm alive, for sure. It's what allowed me to step into my purpose, which I was an actor previous to what I do, but led me to go back to school and get trained in all the work that I do, somatic work. And so that's a very long, realizing a long answer to what got me here, but it was my own journey and realizing that there's this very important field that still the world really doesn't know much about, that is completely necessary in order for us to not just have, for anyone listening, you don't have to have a history like mine to need this work. We all have a nervous system, an autonomic nervous system. And if we don't understand our nervous system and know how to be in the driver's seat of it to bring ourselves into regulation, then essentially our nervous system is running the show in our whole lives. Like it's the one that's in charge of what's happening.
Yes, that was a great answer. And I'm really sorry for all that you have gone through. I'm so sorry for that. But I'm happy that you are able to find a way to heal yourself through this. I definitely have that same or similar feeling where therapy for me, talk therapy wasn't really helping me to, like you said, feel less shame or to not, feel it wasn't that I didn't feel better. I just knew that it was a deeper issue that therapy wasn't helping me with. And I've also been told by therapists that I don't need therapy because I'm too self-aware, which is a common thing that I think others have heard too. But I think that hopefully through learning about this practice, and hopefully the audience will also be able to heal better and to feel better, because I think that having the trauma stuck in your body, which I have all the time, even now, I feel myself kind of tensing up because being on the podcast as a host, even as a guest, I'm always anxiety. So I can always feel my body like tensing up when I do these interviews. Even though I'm calm, but I'm still like, I can feel it right here in my chest right now.
But I just have to say one thing. Sorry to interrupt you, but I just have to say this. What an incredibly brave person you are to say, because this is what most people don't do. We can't tolerate the discomfort. And so what people generally do is they don't step into the thing that they're called to step into, because our nervous system is usually saying that thing isn't safe. Now, the reason it says that is not because it isn't safe, but what I have found in almost a decade of doing this work with thousands of people is that every time the things that people feel called to in their soul, like that's the thing I feel like I should do or need to do or I'm here to do or must do, that those things are always things that were either inhibited in the past, so they weren't available for us, or they were unsafe in a particular way. And I think it's the way that the universe, God, whatever we call that mystery, is like, I'm going to give you this thing in your soul that you can't get away from, that you're going to keep feeling desire for. And the only way to it is your healing. So like a podcast that requires using your voice, taking up space, being heard, being seen, receiving, being vulnerable. And if in the past any of those things were not completely safe, then as we step towards the thing, our nervous system says, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. But you're so brave in saying, and I'm going to step towards it anyway. So you can show your nervous system that things are different now. So sorry, I really interrupted you, but I just wanted to say that. And for everyone listening, that, Courtlyn is modeling so beautifully what it looks like to step towards the things that we desire. And the more that we do it, the more our nervous system sees, oh, it is safe. And then all of a sudden we don't feel anxious when we do the thing. So sorry, I just had to say that.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I love that. Okay, so somatic healing often involves reconnecting with bodily sensations. Can you explain more about how that works, and how do you incorporate somatic practices into your daily life to maintain your own well-being and balance?
So somatic work, again, it's about being subcortical, below the thinking brain, and getting into our bodies. Now, most of us are not embodied, not present to our embodied experience, because there were times in the past where it wasn't safe to be in our body. And, there's so many, let me give an example of like having loving, great parents who are called therapeutically good enough parents. I know that isn't a great term, but that's what it's called. So they loved us, and they, but no one gave them a playbook on parenting. So what do? They try to do better than was done to them. But a lot of people had parents who, when we were crying, they said, you're fine. It's going to be fine. And you're okay. And come eat this cookie or whatever. What they're saying is, it is not okay to feel your experience. And not only that, I don't know how to help you with it. So that means that the options are, I am perpetually drowning in this feeling, or I have to find a way out of the feeling. And a way out, like what I just said, is an example, a mother who baked all the time. And her way was, here, have this cookie, let's bake. That's numbing the feeling. So I'm being taught, we don't know how to be with this feeling. And what we do is we leave the feeling in order to be okay. Or some of us were told we were being brats if we had a feeling or an opinion or whatever. So the whole point is, and those are some examples, and then there's more extreme examples like my history, like I mentioned, where it wasn't safe to be in our body. And no one teaches us, because this work is still not in every school. It should be in every school. Nobody teaches us what to do when we feel embarrassed, or we feel scared, or we feel our heart racing, or we feel tension. And so as a result of all of that and trauma that's not resolved, we find ways to not be in our body. And for some people, if I ask them, what do you feel? They'll say, I don't know. What does that mean? That's a real disconnection from our body. Other people, if I ask them how they feel, they'll say something like, well, what happened was really stressful because blah, 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 blah. And now they're going into a story, not their feeling, not their body, another way out of the body. Some people work all the time, so they don't have to be in their body. Some people exercise all the time. There are a lot of things they do. So, and again, for good reason, because nobody has taught us how to safely be in our body, number one. But number two, how do we get rid of what's called activation or dysregulation that is in our body? Because what we don't want is to just, who would want to be in our bodies if it meant being engulfed or overwhelmed by bad feelings? Like, what a terrible thing that would be, which is why we learn to not be in our body. So somatic healing is about, how do we safely come back into our body? And then not just that, but how do I take that dysregulation and essentially empty it out of my body or get rid of it? That's called discharging. So an analogy that I like to use is, or I guess it's a metaphor, and for people listening, I'm going to describe what I'm doing if you're not seeing this on camera. So I am holding like a giant 1/2-gallon water jug. That's what I drink out of every day. So imagine that this water jug is all the stored activation in our bodies. And it includes our whole trauma history. So the bullying we experienced in school, sexism in the workplace, microaggressions and racism, neglect, our parents fighting all the time, all the things that are not resolved. They're in this jug. They still live inside of us until they're resolved. They actually live in our tissues. So you might think of it like, well, they're sort of dormant if I'm disconnected from them, but they're inside of me. So we each have like a jug of dysregulation or trauma in our systems. Now, somatic work is taking some of what's out in this, or taking some of what's in this jug and emptying it out a little bit so that I can feel that dysregulation in my body. What we don't want, and what I see happen a lot in like self-help retreats, even sometimes with talk therapists who aren't trained in trauma work, is people dumping the whole jug out. And what that looks like is you go to therapy session and someone tells you to just talk about the whole story, tell the whole story. And you tell the whole story, and all of a sudden after you feel dissociated or you feel panicked or you feel worse.
Yep.
Why? Because that person is not a trauma expert. What they had you do was get into your body and dump the whole jug out. And what that does is it's not healing. It can re-traumatize us, meaning we're just re-experiencing the thing, and that never brings us any help or support. It's also like if you've people that have done like inner child work where people have you just journal right from your parts, and all of a sudden you're digging up that story from when you were 6 and you feel terrible and out of control and scared. You dump the whole thing out. So somatic work is different. I think about it like the jug has a spigot, like a small little, almost like a lemonade jug with a little spigot at the bottom. You can turn it. And when we turn the spigot, imagine we have a tiny cup, and we take a little bit of that traumatic energy or dysregulation out. So what that looks like is me feeling in my body a small amount of dysregulation that doesn't engulf me or overwhelm me. And so that's the first part of it. Now, what this can practically look like, let's say I'm working with someone, is I might say, well, first we start with what is working in our lives, because we want to feel into, in our nervous system, our ability to hold regulation. So I might first feel into something positive, which shows our body it's safe to be in our body. And that might be like, recall a memory of a positive memory you've had with someone, or a good thing that happened today. And I'll ask people to bring it alive in their body. So really noticing what that feels like. Then what we would do is, I might say something as simple as, tell me about something that's not working. Like in your present life, just something that's not working. And someone might say, yeah, I just feel like I'm always behind with work. I can't ever get ahead. And so I actually don't want to hear any more of the story. At that point, what we just successfully did was we turned the spigot, and now I have some activation. And what I have them do from that place is, we might say, and this could be about a present thing in the present, it could also be about something in the past. But we take just a little bit. So I would pause them and say, so now tell me where you notice that in your body. So and for some people, they need a lot of guidance because they're not used to being in their body. So I might say, give some examples of sensations like numb or floating or warm or cold or tingly or heavy or light or jello-y or flowing or fiery. So I help people to figure out what are the sensations. Those are all sensations. And we scan our body to locate where is it, tension. And then what we want to do is notice, are there any feelings attached to that? So I might say, okay, let's say someone said, I feel tense in my chest. I might say, if that tension could speak, what would it say? And that will clue us into where this sensation is coming from, how old it is, because it might be from when I was 5. And what we're trying to do is to build our toleration to be with dysregulation. So this is capacity building is what it's called. So I can be in my body when there's a stress response, and I don't get overwhelmed or engulfed by it. So that's the first part of doing somatic work. Now, after I've helped someone to be able to be with it, what we want to do is what I mentioned, that to get rid of it. We don't want it to be in our bodies. So our nervous systems, all nervous systems of every mammal, has the ability to do something called pendulate. And pendulate simply means that we can feel into dysregulation. So I can feel activation in my body. And then my body naturally knows how to discharge it or come into regulation. And animals are so good at this. So like anyone listening has like a dog and your dog gets stressed. Let's say you gave them a bath and they're just feeling stressed about the bath. After the bath, what do? They go on a running jag and they're zooming around the house and they're shaking and they're moving. Their nervous system is saying that was a lot of stress, and I don't want to be in a body that is filled with stress. I
Mm.
want to get rid of it. And so they will do these shaking, making sound, running around so that their nervous system can actually discharge or get rid of it. So if our dogs can do it, if the squirrel outside can do it, we can do it too. But the reason that we struggle with it is because when we experience trauma, our nervous systems lose the natural ability to pendulate, to do that thing that I just described my dog does. And instead, my nervous system is stuck or oriented in dysregulation. And it doesn't actually know how anymore to, like, just like a pendulum, to go back and forth and pendulate out. And so what we're doing with somatic work is essentially I am reteaching someone's system how to take dysregulation and how to release it from your body instead of it being perpetually there. So in that example I gave, let's say I have someone feel into that sensation and feeling in their body. After they feel into it, then what I want to do is help guide their system in discharging it. So that might mean I might bring them some regulating tools. So somatic things that we can do that support our nervous system to do that process. And then what happens is we notice that we feel a little different. Whoa, I just did that thing, somatic therapeutic tool, and now my chest isn't so tight. And now I took a deeper breath. And now I don't have incessant thoughts or feel urgency. And that is us successfully discharging and teaching our system how to have dysregulation and then get rid of it. And the more we do this, we empty that giant jug that I was saying of trauma. So the more we do this, the more we actually release the trauma from the past, and we feel better in our present lives, which allows us to get unstuck, step towards the things that we're wanting, and to feel good in our bodies.
That was a beautiful way of explaining it. I personally have started to write my own book, first book.
Congratulations.
And thank you. But it's causing up a lot of new trauma because going back into the past and reliving it and then writing it down is basically as you were saying, it's pouring the whole thing out.
Yep.
And because of that, I had to take a pause for like the last so many months. I think I took like probably like 8 months off because I couldn't handle how much I was reliving all at once. And to have your whole life come back up was intense. And I finally got back into writing it a few weeks ago, I think 2 weeks ago. I'm starting to do it now slowly because I want to, as you said, kind of take it out a little bit at a time so that I'm not having the same overwhelming amount of trauma hitting me again. And with that, like doing it part by part or piece by piece, it's giving me less chest pain and less uh emotional distress, I guess, because I think now I'm learning how to control what I am feeling and how much I'm feeling at once.
Yeah. Did anyone tell you how to do that? Did you come with that by yourself?
Yes.
That's amazing because you have a lot of internal wisdom that not everyone has. So that's what a gift you have. And what I want to say is that's so important that I actually get very frustrated about in our world, especially around creativity. All the things written out there about creativity are great, wonderful, people doing amazing things. But what they don't, like, leaders in creativity, all the books, all the people, I don't want to like name names, but doing great stuff. But what I also want to say about all those people is no one is talking about what it takes when you have any trauma history, the path towards it and the pace of things, and how you must work with your nervous system we must work at the pace that our nervous system is ready for. If we try to push beyond what our nervous system is ready for, it will always win. It's 500 million years old, this nervous system, which means it's very good at its job. And it doesn't matter how strong-willed we are. I'm a very strong-willed person. And my nervous system would stop me in its tracks. And I'm so stubborn that I spent years trying to push harder than it. And that led to me being sick all the time, losing my hair, just like extreme responses because I was trying to go faster than my system had the capacity for. And so what's actually true, and again, it's not talked about enough. So what it can make people feel is like, number one, it can make people feel like maybe it's not supposed to happen for them, which is not true. Usually we're on the right path if we find that there's a lot of dysregulation around the thing we want. It usually means like, oh yeah, that's the right way, but we have to do it at a pace that's right for us. And when we slow down, one of my mentors, Peter Levine, says, do less, it does more. So if we want to go faster, go slower. That's actually how you go fast. It builds momentum to go fast. We go faster that way. And so when we are actually able to say, you know what, I'm going to slow this down so that I'm pushing my nervous system, meaning it's uncomfortable, it doesn't feel great, but it's not causing me the sorts of distresses that I've experienced when I was doing this to myself, and also what you talked about. And you know, the whole patriarchal, capitalistic, colonized culture that we live in is all about, number one, about trauma, but all about overriding your nervous system, and as if we are robots that should just produce and never slow down and do to be consumed. And that's what's celebrated in our culture still.
Yeah.
Versus how about we also celebrate joy, and we celebrate rest and play and all these other things that, by the way, everyone listening, I'm still struggling with myself, so don't want to make it sound like I've got this figured out. But when we actually embody those things, that is doing the work. That's a part of doing the work. Because when we do that, the writing will be so much better. Like if you have like a nourishing dinner with some friends where you're laughing and having a wonderful time, the next morning when you sit down to write, that'll be so much better than if you spent the night before going through your notes by yourself and just overworking, you know? So anyway, as you can see here, I can get on bandwagons where I take us, we go to another continent, and then we hopefully you rein us in and come back. But I hope some of what I'm saying is making sense.
It all makes sense, yes, and it's all, I think, really helpful for me and probably to the audience too, because I think we're all kind of going through it all together all at once. And I think that we just need to have these moments to understand what we are feeling, and to have, you know, people like you to explain what's happening, because I think that not everyone has time or takes the time as you are to really understand, and to really understand, you know, the healing and what it takes and what we need to do. So your answers are perfect for this, because I think it's really giving us a lot of information that's valuable. So your journey also involves embracing the unknown and stepping into the life that we want to live. So how do you guide your clients in embracing uncertainty and navigating the challenges of their own transformative paths?
Well, until we're safe inside, we're not safe anywhere. And that's really true.
Yeah.
It's the whole, like when people are like, why heal? Why do this? Like, who cares about the past? Like, I want to live a different life. Well, the only way to live a different life is to care about and heal the past. And when we experience trauma, it's an experience, as I mentioned, of overwhelm of stimulation or activation in our bodies. And so as a result of that overwhelm of activation, our bodies, or this vessel that we live in, is no longer safe for us, because the option is to be, as I mentioned earlier, being stuck with that overwhelm. And so if I don't feel safe inside, what I will do, brilliant coping strategy, is if I don't feel safe inside, I'm going to look for anything in my external life to give me a semblance of safety. And we've got a lot of really great ways that we can find that. Like, I keep my house in this particular way, and when I do that, then I feel calm. Well, that's really a clue that you might not feel totally safe inside. But when my home reflects something that makes me feel in control, that makes me feel safe. So if I keep things in a particular way, if I control my partner, if I control my children, and not in like a control freak way, but just, like having my hands on my company, I just make sure I have my hands on it all the time or whatever. That gives us a sense of safety. And it also will give us a sense of safety when everything's going right in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So what I see a lot of people doing is both of those things, finding ways to control externally, and also they feel really good when things are going well, and they feel really bad when things aren't. And that's because all of that is a clue that I don't feel safe inside. And so a part of stepping into the lives we desire is not just creating and stepping towards the external thing. It starts with the internal. So I have to begin creating internal safety. And the way that we do that is through, number one, bringing regulation to your nervous system. So what I work with people to do is change something called your vagal tone. This just means the shape of your nervous system. So we all have a way our nervous system is currently shaped, but they're like clay, they're reshapeable. And when I say how they're currently shaped, there are three predominant states in our nervous system that we can hang out in at any given moment. It's actually 6 total states. And so at any given moment, our nervous system is experiencing one of those 6 states. It has to be one of those 6. And there tends to be a place in your nervous system that I hang out in the most. Like some people hang out in their sympathetic nervous system where there's a lot of energy. It's where anxiety, worry, frustration, fear, terror, rage, racing thoughts, all of urgency lives. And that would mean their vagal tone is shaped in a way that it's predominantly sympathetic. There might be some people that feel apathetic, hopeless, shut down, they deflect, they avoid, they just feel kind of like, in a funk all the time. Their nervous system is shaped in their dorsal vagal complex. That's the state of shutdown. So those are differently shaped nervous systems. My job is to, number one, I teach people about the nervous system. So we actually create a map of your nervous system specific to you. It's like having a map that's your internal GPS. It tells you where you are. And that's important because at any given moment, we want to know what's happening inside of us. So if I can literally pick up a piece of paper and I read it and it tells me based on the feelings, sensations, thoughts, behaviors that I'm having, oh, that's where I am. I'm in my sympathetic system. And I also look at the degree of dysregulation. So I think of it like 1 to a 10, least extreme to most. So if I can note, oh, I'm at a 6 sympathetic right now, then I give people what are called, or I've already said, therapeutic regulating tools to regulate. And I think of that like a rep at the gym. So if I was to go lift weights and I did a curl and I kept doing curls, my arm would get stronger. My bicep would get stronger, my tricep. So this one curl would be called a neural exercise for our nervous system. So think of it like a rep. So if someone's feeling dysregulated, I give them lots of tools. Let's say one of them was controlled breathing, because we can use our breath to regulate us, or humming, or for particular vibrational sounds, or tapping, lots of things. And you do one of those exercises, and let's say you don't feel like 100 times better, but you feel a little bit better. Oh, I can take a deeper breath. I feel slightly more grounded. Amazing. That's called a neural exercise. And if you do those enough, you literally reshape your nervous system. And the result of that, and I've walked thousands of people through this, the result is things like somebody used to have panic attacks all the time and they just no longer have them anymore. Someone wakes up with high anxiety and now they wake up calm. And that's from the consistent neural exercises, again, every day, again and again and again. Might do 10 of them a day. And they could take 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute. So I work on that process because we have to reshape the nervous system, which makes us feel safe inside. That's number one. Number two, we all have parts of ourselves. And when I say parts, people may have heard that referred to as internal family systems, inner child work. But essentially the way that it works is we might look like our numeric age, but inside of us, there are many versions of us. And when we've experienced trauma in the past, it's sort of like those parts are stuck at that numeric age. And when anything in our present lives remind those parts of the past, it's as if they are brought back to it. So a great example is, I hear people say this a lot. They're chugging along and they're single in their life. They're like, I feel good, pretty good. And then they start dating again. And all of a sudden they're dating and they feel out of control.
Yep.
Like, what's happening? I feel scared. Why do I feel like I'm going to die if this person doesn't respond to me? I feel out of control. I'm racing thoughts, all these things.
Yeah.
And if you notice, we don't actually feel like adult us in that moment. You might feel like a teenager, like a 16-year-old girl that's just obsessed with this person and I can't think of anything else. And you're noticing it and you're like, what am I doing? What's happening? Because it's not
Hmm.
adult us. Some of us feel very young, like 3 years old, like I'm going to die if you leave, which is a very young child who would have died if the parent, left, and so on and so forth. So we have to address our parts, because our parts are often the ones that are saying it's not safe to step into that life that you're wanting to step into. It's not safe to date because people abandon you. Don't do that. It's not safe to have that bigger purpose because I know what's going to happen if you use your voice. You're going to be reprimanded or unloved or you're being neglected or whatever. So we have to learn. What I teach people to do is understand our parts and who's present. What I think of it like is who's present in my body at any given moment. And we have to know the difference between what it feels like when I feel grounded like a tree, like capable, able, wise. That's adult us. But then there's all these other versions, and we have to know who they are, and we have to know why they show up, because there's different things that make each of the parts show up. And then most importantly, we have to reparent them. So after I help people to regulate their nervous systems a bit, then what we can do is we can begin coming to the aid of these younger parts and giving them from our adult self what they never got, or what our parents couldn't give them, or what we didn't just wasn't available to us. And the more we do that, we actually imprint new experiences, meaning our psyche and our subconscious think that us reparenting is real, because it is real. And so all of a sudden, I've changed my baseline for love because I've been internally loving myself. And that means that I no longer choose unavailable partners. I choose partners who are who love me like I love me. So all of that work, I know this sounds like a lot of work, but it can go quite quick. So we do those things. And then we look at, now that we have that understanding of our system, we're in the driver's seat. What we want to do is take tolerable steps towards the things that we're desiring, which is very similar to what you said. And a tolerable, so the way I see the world of manifestation work, this is an incredibly important component. So one thing when you think about manifesting, you often what's talked about is embody the thing as if it's happening now. So feel into the thing as if it's presently occurring, which is important. And I'm bringing that alive in my body. So the thing I want to happen in 2 years, I'm bringing it alive now to show my system that this is safe to experience, and so that I can draw it in. But what I often see happen is people then from that place, they just try to take actionable steps. Now, if you try to take an actionable step when you're bringing it alive, like let's say writing a book and you bring it alive, this is going to be on the New York Times bestseller list, or this is on the New York Times bestseller list. I'm seeing a book tour with thousands of people that I'm helping, and they're feeling so moved by the message. So I feel into that. And then I sit at my computer to write. Our nervous system is going to shut us down, because it's essentially like our nervous system thinks there's 2 million people as I'm typing. And it's
Yeah,
like,
as you were saying,
what?
I could feel my chest tightening up when you were saying that.
Yeah, exactly. Your nervous system is saying, like, what? I'm going to have all these people watching us now, and it will debilitate us.
Yeah.
So the important thing is we want to feel into that, like where I'm going. And then we want to put it on a shelf. So we feel into it. And then I say, okay, nervous system, today, none of that is happening. Today, I'm not even writing a book. Today, I am writing 2 pages to one person. And I think of the one person. Who are they? The one person who needs to hear this. And I'm writing 2 pages, maybe like a journal entry to them. I'll think of it like, not a chapter. I'm not writing a book. I'm not writing a chapter. I'm writing 2 pages to a friend who I don't know. And I don't know where they are. Maybe they're in Brazil and they're going to be reading this one day. And I'm writing 2 pages to them. That's all I'm doing. And no one's reading it until all parts are ready. And when we do that, what I've actually done is I have just created safety for my parts. I've created a tolerable step, meaning I've showed my nervous system, we're taking a step that's this big, we're not taking a step this big. And when we make the step smaller, our nervous system is more apt to let us complete it. And when I say tolerable step, there are two distinct features. Number one, we can complete it, we can do it. Number two, it doesn't feel good, which is a bummer. But the reason it doesn't feel good is because our nervous system is essentially yelling to us like, are you sure that's okay? Are you sure that's okay? Are you sure that's okay?
Yeah.
But we can complete it. That's what makes it tolerable. And the more that we take tolerable steps, these steps get gathered up, and we each have kind of like an internal computer system or database with every lived experience we've ever had is inside of it. So as we take these tolerable steps, we are showing, not telling our nervous system that the past is over and that things are different now. And so it's like a data point. Oh, wow, I did that thing and nothing bad happened. I did that thing again, nothing bad happened. And the more we accumulate those disconfirming experiences, the more our nervous system sees, oh, it is actually safe. And then what occurs is they feel easy. They eventually become an easy step because I've done it so many times. Like driving a car. Done it so many times, it's just becomes so easy because you have so many data points around it.
So while I have you here, because one of my biggest, the thing that makes me the most tense, I would say, is when I know I have to speak. I hate speaking. I hate it. I have a stutter. So when I do, I believe my stutter is because of all my trauma too. Like I think it causes me to tense up and I want my words and I'm choking me and I'm still working on it. I don't know how to heal it. I'm working on it, but it's a thing. So for moments like when I do the podcast, when my guest is speaking, there are times when I'm like even now, I feel tense when I know the guest is almost done with the answer and I have to ask the next question. And then I can feel my body tensing because I know I have to talk again. So I'm just curious to know from your point of view or your thoughts about how I can work to heal that fear of speaking when I am feeling it's time for me to speak. And when that happens, my whole body gets really tense. And then I end up choking and stuttering more because I am afraid of what's going to happen when I speak.
That's right. Well, first of all, how brave of you to share. What is so important, the first step is we have to externalize what's been internalized. If we internalize something, we keep it inside of us, like this example you're giving, or let's say someone has social anxiety, and I just keep it inside and I mask it. Because we're all expert maskers because we had to be, not all of us, a lot of people are expert maskers because we had to be. And that means masking means I'm going to present a very different way than what I'm internally experiencing. Incongruent. So I have, like you're talking, having anxiety inside, but presenting as if I'm really calm externally, but I'm not really calm.
Right.
And that incongruency leads to more dysregulation.
Mm-hmm.
So if the number one thing is naming it, and which is exactly what you just did, and by naming it, I create congruency. So no longer is it incongruent, meaning my internal does not match the external, they now match. And that is the first step in beginning to dissipate some of the activation. And I'm just curious, what did you notice after you named it? You just said it out loud.
I'm still feeling the same amount of tenseness in my chest, but I did feel a little bit of relief when I did talk about it because I think that having that acknowledging it, I think is what makes me feel like I can push through it.
Yeah, exactly. So a couple other things. Without overthinking it, and because this is not adult you, it's a part of you. And a part that learned this from the past. Do you have it without overthinking? Just check into the sensation in your body. Can you sense that? Is it tightness? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah. So without overthinking, can you ask that tightness how old it is? Might not get an exact age. It might be like young, 5. Just a sense of how old it is.
Do I ask it out loud or do I ask it in my head?
Say it out loud if you don't mind.
I want to say about 17. I'm not sure why that came to my mind.
Well, that's it. And I'm so glad you're doing this for listeners so they can see what this practically looks like. Thanks for doing it. 17. That tells us that some point when you're around that age, that being seen and shining bright as yourself and being you was not safe in a particular way. And so that 17-year-old, as you are doing these powerful things in your life, like having an amazing kick-ass podcast, she's like, I don't know if it's safe to be us because of what happened.
Mm.
So what we want to do is, and what I would want you to practice is getting in touch with adult you. So any moment that you've had experiences where you felt most alive, a lot of times spiritual experiences can help us feel that way, times in nature, times with a loved one, when we have felt connected to the universe and knowing it's all okay. Like that real adult you. Does that make sense what I'm talking about?
Yes.
You feel
Yeah.
anchored and safe. A knowingness that it's all going to work out. It's all unfolding as it should. Like that part. I want you to practice getting her in your body, even once a day for 5 minutes. Just see what it feels like to be in her. The reason I said a tree is because I've often noticed it can feel like grounded and anchored, like a great sequoia tree, just really big. And I want you to feel her in your body, because what we need her to comfort this 17-year-old and let her know that she's okay and she's got you now, that you're the one that's actually going to be doing this speaking. You're not asking her to do it. And not only that, but you're her protector. Like she can stand behind you. She feels exposed. Like she's the one that has to be exposed to me, to everyone listening here, to all. And by the way, we all relate to this because I have parts that do the same thing in my own way. We all do. Every single person does. So this is what's called, or I call, internal co-regulation. What needs to happen is we can't just expect her to feel better. We need the adult you to do what no adult was able to do in that moment for whatever reason, which was to see her. So see her. So understand her, listen to her. Number 2, attune with her. Attunement is not what we say, because you've had people say like let's say I said, I'm feeling really sad. And someone's like, oh yeah, you seem like you're really sad. That doesn't feel attuned. Like you're saying the right words, but it's not, because attuning is about connecting to someone's emotions, to their nervous system. So what I want you to do is see her, like not when you're doing an interview, but just thinking about, well, also when you're doing an interview, but before, see her and connect with her, meaning connect with what she feels. She probably feels scared, exposed. I don't know what else she feels, but lots of things. And what's important is, and not having an agenda to make her stop, which is the irony, right? Because we want it to stop. But if I have an agenda with someone, if I'm going in with someone and I'm like, you need to knock it off, but I don't say that. I'm like, hi, 17-year-old me. Yeah, you're really great, but stop it. That actually exacerbates the dysregulation. It makes it bigger. So if we try to say, stop it, go away, go away, go away, it grows.
Right.
So instead, what I want you to do is, so do that process of everyday connected adult you. Then every day, by the way, she probably shows up with the book too. So every day connect to the adult you. Then every day connect to her from adult you. And let her know, like adult us knows, our soul self knows, there's no such thing called being late to our purpose. We're right on time. Everything is unfolding right on time. Adult us knows that. Our soul self knows that. Little us, they don't know that.
No.
And no one can take what's for you. Adult you knows that. She might not know that. And she's with you now. And she has you to protect her. She might not know that. And the more that you comfort her, so connect to that 17-year-old and say, yeah, no wonder it feels scary to be on a podcast. No wonder it feels scary to use your voice because of what happened. I'm going to show you how it's really different. And I'm going to go do this podcast, not you. And here's the other thing. We need to have outs for our parts, meaning like they need to have choice. So what I always do is, when, let's say I'm stepping towards this next big thing in my life, whatever that is, and my parts are like, well, I don't know about being seen by 10,000 people on a Zoom call. That's crazy. And what I do with my parts is I say, you know what? And if you did have a panic attack, it'll be okay. You know what we do? We just exit out of Zoom. And what we would say is, I'd have my assistant say, oh, Sarah's internet's not working. So I tell my parts that. That's what I let my parts know. Because now all of a sudden they're like, oh, okay, so even if the worst thing happens, we're going to be okay. And that's me mothering them and saying, yes, even if the worst thing happens, you're going to be okay. And you know what? All 10,000 of those other people, they probably would feel this way too. It's really normal. So, but I'm giving you that out, because if I don't give my part that out and say, you have to get this exactly right, and you better not mess it up, and you're so messed up, and everybody else is normal, whatever normal is, and you aren't, and no one else is experiencing this, all that does is exacerbates the dysregulation. And instead saying, you know what? When we go out in the world, most people are not regulated. Most people are dysregulated. They're just very good at hiding it. Most people, even people who public speak well, a lot of them are so anxious or depressed or struggling. And so the more we can say, oh, remember that to our, because our parts think we're the only one.
Right.
And the more we can do that, give our parts an out, the more regulated they're going to be able to be during the experience, because they have us, and they have us in the driver's seat, and they have us in control. And then just quickly, a couple other things that are so important is when we're in our sympathetic nervous system, that's what that is. We want to do things that help to discharge that energy. So some simple breathing exercises. We want to do shorter inhalations and longer exhalations. Helps to come out of that state. So simple breathing cycle is the 4-7-8 breath. We inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale through our mouth for 8 slowly, like we're blowing out a candle. Humming is an incredible regulating tool. Tapping, I've got lots of resources on my my Instagram that are free. Tapping is really beneficial. Swaying is very beneficial. Shaking our body is really beneficial. All of the things I'm naming, orienting, using our external environment to bring us present. So using every sense you have access to bring you present. There's a particular sound from Peter Levine's work called VOO. So when we make that vibrational sound in a low register, lower than our speaking voice, and we send the vibration into our diaphragm, stomach area, it helps to bring us into regulation. I'll just show you what that sounds like. Very different than we might think. So it's not breathing up in our chest, it's breathing down. It sounds like this. I do that sound 2 or 3 times until I have no air left. And again, I've got lots of regulating tools on my site, but all of those things are incredibly important in showing our bodies and our parts that we are actually safe when they don't think we're safe.
Thank you for that. I had so many things to ask you, but I feel like having it live now, I think it helped me to answer a lot of these questions and hopefully give the audience a better sense of what you do and how you help your clients. So thank you so much for showing that and telling me how to work through my own issues. That's not the word I want to use, but you know what I'm saying? Like work through my own, what I'm going through.
And everybody has them. Everyone has them their own. They just look a little different.
Yes. So to end our show, because we're running out of time. So I want to ask you 2 questions before we end. So first is a bonus question. Can you tell us the last time that you felt fearless? A time when you were afraid, but you did it anyway. And then how did it turn out?
Yeah, I was just in Mexico I'm in a part of this thing called Devotional Leadership Council with this amazing woman leading it called, her name Nisha Moodley. It was really more like an indigenous ceremony. 4 of the women are initiated priestesses of different indigenous orientations. And it was incredibly powerful. It was, it helped me to embody different parts of myself that have been, that have been not fully awakened, particularly my eros and sensuality in a really big way. And what supported that to happen, and which means aliveness, because that's life force energy meaning our full aliveness. And what helped that to happen was a couple things. The work, me having done a decade of work already to hold it, but also being in community. So when we are in connection and community with other people, it is like medicine for our bodies and our souls, the primal human need that we have. And that allowed, that level of connection for a week with really safe people who could attune with me, and I them, really supports such incremental accelerated healing to happen.
Thank you for sharing that. And then lastly, how can our audience find you?
You can find me on Instagram, and my handle is Sarah with an H, the letter B, Coaching. I have a lot of free resources there and teach on there almost daily. And then you can also find me at sarahbaldwincoaching.com.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Sarah. I think that I was probably the most excited to talk to you throughout the entire series, honestly, because I knew that our conversation was going to be really powerful and important for not only me, but for the audience. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Courtlyn. So nice to be here and meet you.
And that is a wrap. Fearless Narratives airs every Monday, Wednesdays, and Friday. Thank you for joining us today. You have been an amazing audience, and we really love your support. So we also would love for you to give us a nice 5-star review. And until next time, stay fearless.